Hi, I'm Nora, she, her pronouns. I'm going to be facilitating tonight for the first time. So thanks. I'm on the Ward 2 Steering Committee. Welcome to the Ward 2 NPA. Also, happy World Kindness Day. Just wanted to throw that out there. So we have a super packed agenda. Thank you to everyone who helped out with the dinner again. Thank you to our musicians. And we're going to get started. So, introductions. Can we have a motion to adopt, approve the agenda and previous minutes, please, from last? Okay, wonderful, thank you. Do we have a second? Okay, cool, I see hands. Thanks, guys. So in terms of other introductions, I'm Nora, she, her pronouns. I live on North Union Street in Ward 2, obviously. We have Grace and Kaysen and Mark and Charlie in the baseball hat, and Lauren will be joining us virtually tonight. Cool. So moving on to public forum. Everyone has 2 minutes to speak. Yeah, if you could please state your name, pronouns if you'd like, street name, and ward, and just follow our ground rules as an MPA, that would be wonderful. Did anyone want to speak during public forum tonight? All right. Anyone want to speak? Public forum. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Going once. We don't have anyone online, right? Going twice. Okay, well that felt a little too easy, but cool. Do we feel ready to move on for community support for Apartheid-Free pledge request? Are we all set with that? Yeah, Duncan? Okay. Well, I am happy to...
You do the clapping thing.
Oh, clapping thing again. Okay. If you can hear me, clap once. If you hear me, clap twice. Okay. If you hear me, clap twice again. Okay. I know, it's kind of echoey in here, right? And I can't tell. My sound still good? Okay. Cool. Okay, I'll triple check. No one wanted to speak during public forum. We're just gonna move right along then. Okay, so I am happy to introduce Duncan Krebs, Jill Clark, Golub, Paul Fleckenstein from the Vermont Coalition for Palestinian Liberation. They are going to be speaking on community support for an apartheid-free pledge request and letter to City Council.
Hello, everybody. Thanks to all for having us. My name is Duncan Krebs. I'm a resident of Ward 2 here today with the Vermont Coalition for Palestinian Liberation. I'm here with Paul Fleckenstein, and we're going to be speaking about the Apartheid-Free Community Pledge, which is a measure that we're trying to get placed on the Burlington Town Hall Meeting Day ballot. We've tried to do this for a few years now, and we have a new open letter campaign that we'd love to share with all of you, our neighbors. So I'm going to pass it over to Paul to get us started, and we appreciate your engagement and questions at the end. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Duncan. Can you all hear me in the back? It's all good? Okay, thank you. Again, I'm Paul Fleckenstein from the Vermont Coalition for Palestinian Liberation and the Burlington Apartheid-Free Committee. And we have about a 50-minute presentation. I'm going to go through the run of show first. have some background on Israeli apartheid. Duncan's going to talk about the local campaign. We'll go briefly into some next steps, and then we'll have a period of open discussion for questions and comments. So if that sounds okay to everyone, I will just get started. The main issue here is one of democracy and freedom of speech, because the Democratic majority on the Burlington City Council has 2 times denied ballot access to the Apartheid-Free Community Resolution, the Apartheid-Free Community Pledge Resolution. They have taken the side not of democratic values, but of authoritarian values in denying free speech and democracy. So the reason is because they support apartheid Israel, settler colonialism that have led to the current genocide. So that's why we're going back to a little background material here to start. So the crime of apartheid, it's internationally defined as a crime, and I think that should mean something to us given the world that we're facing right now. 3 aspects to it. One is the intent to maintain domination of one racial group over another. The second, a context of systematic oppression of one racial group over another. That is, it's racist. And then number 3, inhumane acts. And many of us are familiar with the system of Jim Crow in the United States and in the South. That was a form of apartheid. Israeli apartheid has certain characteristics, so you can move it ahead. So there are 4 strategies. 4 of the strategies are decades of discriminatory land and property seizures, home demolitions, forced evictions. Second is segregation, so distinct system of laws and policies and infrastructure that keep Palestinians restricted to certain areas, to enclaves, and subject to travel restrictions, walls, to keep a separation between Palestinians and Jewish Israelis. A third characteristic is deprivation, so the deliberate impoverishment of Palestinians around education, infrastructure, healthcare, access to land, a whole bunch of legal rights. So it's a disadvantage compared to Jewish Israelis. And then the 4th one is fragmentation, and that's keeping Palestinians across the West Bank, across Gaza, inside Israel as defined in 1948, and Palestinians in the diaspora around the world separate from each other. Okay. So who says that Israel is an apartheid state? Well, a whole bunch of international organizations, human rights organizations. 2 in Israel are Yesh Din and B'Tselem, and then there's Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, organizations that we're familiar with. Also, the International Criminal Court has found Israel to be an apartheid state. Next slide. Can you, go to that one. But Israel has made it easy because they've officially defined Israel as an apartheid state. In 2018, the so-called Basic Law said that, defined Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. And from the law, says that Israel is the historical homeland of the Jewish people. The right of national self-determination in the state of Israel is unique to the Jewish people. So there are some factual problems with the homeland of the Jewish people. It doesn't say anything about the indigenous Palestinian population, and it reserves rights exclusively to the Jewish people. So it's after this law that this whole range of organizations, from B'Tselem to Human Rights Watch to Amnesty International, made their reports defining Israeli apartheid. So our pledge resolution is about apartheid and settler colonialism, and I think this map is really key to understanding historically how we got to the moment of genocide that we're at now. So the two colors, hopefully everyone can see this. The blue is Palestinian land. The black is the land of the Zionist settlements and colonization. So 1918, we're over here. Primarily European, Jewish settler colonial settlement of Palestinian up to 1947. Jewish people are about 10%, or at this time about 1/3 of the population. Jump forward to 1960, after Israel established itself, taking 80% of Palestine for 1/3 of the population. And Palestinians are now confined to the blue areas. And then 2017, much like it is today, you can see that Palestinian land is further fragmented, and there's more land exclusively dedicated and under the control of the State of Israel. And one of the ways to maintain when you're taking over, as well as Israeli historian Ilan Pappé said, the Zionist project of colonization has always been to take as much of Palestine as possible with as few Palestinians as possible. If there are the same number of Palestinians as Israeli Jews in historical Palestine, then a system of apartheid is necessary to separate the Palestinians to have a Jewish majority state. So who's paying for this? These are figures from 2024. There's about $17 billion in military aid going to Israel from just the United States. And you can see that's $3 million from the people of Burlington, $27 million from the people of the state of Vermont. And here's, while we're facing austerity and lack of services in all kinds of areas, this graph chart gives an example of some of the things that could be funded instead. 301 elementary school teachers in the state of Vermont from that money. And I think that's it. Pass it over to Duncan.
Great, thanks, Paul. So that was kind of some of the context of what's happening in Israel and Palestine. And now we're going to talk a little bit about our local campaign and why we feel that this, even if it may feel far away, is actually a deeply, deeply local issue. And I know many of us feel that way. But a little bit of background. So we are a part of the Vermont Coalition for Palestinian Liberation, which is a group of several Vermont organizations and individuals dedicated to spending our time and energy on fighting for a free Palestine. Next slide. You just click. Just click with the mouse. So a little bit more of that Vermont context that Paul was getting at. So in 2024, $27.6 million left Vermont to send to Israel to carry out the war atrocities we all saw on our smartphones. Furthermore, while this is a local issue, just a few years ago, 3 Palestinian students were shot in Burlington, wearing keffiyehs. I'm sure many of us remember that really horrific instance of violence. But also the boomerang comes back, and acts of injustice and apartheid overseas echo throughout the world. And for as long as we allow those to continue, we will also be subject to them. And historically, Vermonters have a long history of acknowledging that very interconnectedness. Many Vermont communities and organizations played an outspoken role in speaking out against South African apartheid, and that successful campaign of kind of solidarity is what ended up collapsing that apartheid regime. And there's a lot to learn from that in our own context now. The next slide. So kind of what we're talking about here today is the Apartheid-Free Community Pledge. There are trifolds on all of your tables if you kind of want to follow along. But basically, Apartheid-Free Community Pledge, or we kind of refer to it as AFC, is an initiative started by the American Friends Service Committee. It's based on the global movement to end South African apartheid, and already over 880 groups worldwide have taken the pledge. So the pledge states, we affirm our commitment to freedom, justice, and equality for the Palestinian people and all people. We oppose all forms of racism, bigotry, discrimination, and oppression, and we declare ourselves an apartheid-free community. And to that end, we pledge to join others in working to end all support to Israel's apartheid regime, settler colonialism, and military occupation. You can kind of click through too for the points. I think there's 3. So far in Vermont, we've seen 50 plus businesses, organizations, and face groups endorse AFC. You can see them listed there and also on the trifold, including 9 Vermont towns that put AFC on the ballot in 2024. Winooski, Brattleboro, Newfane, Thetford, and Plainfield all successfully voted to adopt the AFC pledge in support of kind of its messaging. I think there's maybe one more too. And then right now, our coalition has campaigns happening all across the state to bring AFC to as many Vermont towns as we can and want to take it on. 2 more. Thank you. So a little bit of kind of background on local politics. So in Burlington's city charter, it states that if citizens are able to produce a petition containing the signatures of 5% of the registered voters in Burlington, then an advisory question can go on the ballot for town meeting day, so then the people can decide. So essentially, you collect the necessary number of signatures, you present that to the city, and then they have kind of the prerogative to put that question on the ballot and allow the people of Burlington to vote. It's a local kind of democratic process. What's happened, however, is 2 years in a row, we can go to the next slide too, after collecting the necessary number of signatures, exceeding it in fact, the Democrats on the city council blocked the AFC question from going onto the ballot, saying, no, we will not let the people of Burlington vote on this. They cannot have their say on it. We will not respect this well-established process in our city charter. Since then, kind of all across the state, those 5 towns I mentioned have adopted AFC. Vermont politicians, including Senator Sanders, Peter Welch, Becca Balint, have called Israel's assault a genocide. And notably as well, last spring, the city council passed a free speech resolution in the wake of arrests of student leaders, mentioning kind of the right to speak out about Palestine and the importance of free speech in our own democracy. Furthermore, as we were kind of dealing with this, all across the world, communities are standing up for what they believe in and what they think is right. In Somerville, Massachusetts, a ballot question to boycott and divest from businesses supporting Israeli apartheid passed. In Burnaby, Canada, they similarly passed AFC, in fact, and they wrote to their federal government demanding an arms embargo to Israel. Iowa City passed a resolution to boycott and divest from businesses supporting Israeli genocide and occupation. And then just a few days ago, St. Louis passed a resolution to divest city pensions from war and human rights violations by Israel. Communities all over the world, right here in our country, are standing up for what they believe in and align with their values. And so now where we are today is we have this open letter to the city council and to the mayor. The open letter states, Democrats on the city council blocked the AFC pledge advisory question from going to voters 2 years in a row, despite thousands of Burlington residents signing petitions to put the pledge on the ballot. In April of 2025, the council unanimously approved a resolution for protecting free speech on Palestine, and it is time to rectify the fact that our free speech rights have been repeatedly denied. There should be a democratic vote on adopting the pledge. All we are saying is the people of Burlington have a right to vote on this issue. It is an issue that people care about. They have shown that time and time again. And all we are asking for the City Council Democrats is to allow this process to continue and put it on the ballot. You can jump to the next slide too. So as far as immediate next steps, what this NPA can do. We can vote on a resolution to call on the City Council to uphold the democratic norms and endorse the open letter as an NPA. So you can see on the table we have resolutions there. You can read that language. That's something that we could adopt as a community. We're all each other's neighbors. I know many of us really care about this. And kind of no matter where you fall in this, you can say, hey, like the democratic process matters to me. And it's frustrating that that hasn't been upheld. As far as what you can do as an individual, you can sign the open letter. There are copies of that on the table as well. You can sign those and make sure they get to me or Paul, or we have more copies as well. Really just kind of show your support, put your name out there, aligning that you care about this. You can also contact the City Council Democrats to demand that they change course and adhere to this process and allow us to vote on this. You can tell your neighbors that weren't able to make it tonight about this. You can post on Front Porch Forum. And then if you feel called to, you can also volunteer with the VCPL. We have this kind of things happening all across the city and the state. Whatever skill set you have, whatever time you have, we'd love to talk to you about how you can get more involved. So yeah, with that, we would love to have a discussion, hear from all of you what you're thinking about, and kind of talk about what next steps could be together. But thank you.
Thank you. So just quick point of clarification, a vote cannot happen tonight since it was not warned. That's just an NPA ground rule. However, okay, sorry, literally Lauren's texting me right now. We would also, okay. Basically, long story short, the vote cannot happen tonight, unfortunately. Of course, discussion can happen. However, are there any questions, comments, clarifications, concerns? Mark has a microphone there.
Well, I appreciate the presentation. I wholeheartedly support...
I'm sorry, could you just state your name
Yes,
real quick?
Kit Andrews, and I'm a Ward 2 resident. So I appreciate the presentation. I wholeheartedly agree with, well, I agree with the content of the Apartheid-Free statement, but I strongly also agree that the citizens should have the right to vote on this, and it's just kind of amazing that for 2 years in a row. Anyway, I agree with all that. My issue is, how do we move forward to the December NPA meeting? What's the transition, given that the presentation is happening in this meeting and the vote will happen next meeting? I just want to make sure that it's a good process.
Yes, so that feels like an NPA question. Yes, so the NPA would be the ones to write the resolution, or the steering committee. So it would be myself, Mark, Kaysen, Grace, and Lauren is online, just to clarify. Let me see, Lauren is the key of knowing all information, and she is texting, so I apologize for staring at my phone. But we can ask everyone tonight if we would like the resolution to be on the December Ward 2 agenda. Yeah, so those are kind of the key points. Vote not happening tonight. We can vote if we would like the resolution on the agenda next month, and it would be us writing the resolution. Like a draft resolution that everyone would then vote on.
Great, and
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Just on our side, it's our NPA, and we can decide what the resolution wants to say. I guess obviously in line with the steering committee. We have a draft there of some language we think would go a long way. But I think we want this to be something for all of us, and we're happy to collaborate.
Yes, Mark. Oh, and Charlie, I didn't see you.
Donna Bister, I'm actually in Ward 3, but I think, can you attach the presentation to the minutes, and then everybody can see it before the vote next time?
Yeah, you mean this presentation?
Yeah.
Yes, it should already be, but if it's not, we absolutely will.
Hi, Annalise Carrington, she, her, Ward 2. I'm curious what justification the city council has given so far to deny the vote. Have there been is there like a specific case outside of maybe personal politics? Thanks.
There have been many explanations of why voting no. It's kind of like a word salad in my view. It's not an appropriate issue. It's not a local issue. It's divisive. It's the role of the city council to determine what goes to the voters, not citizens who make a petition. We have a responsibility to oversee this kind of dialogue or process in the community, but then that doesn't happen. I don't know, what are some other, I mean, that's the basic things. It's anti-Semitic. It's, so this is even though 5 or 6 towns, the city council has just put it on the ballot as a matter of, that's what happens in a democracy. I think that, so those are some of the reasons. We've been replying to those reasons, but we find then there's something else after that. So we think that the real reason is to defend apartheid Israel and to not allow criticism of U.S. aid and support to Israel. So I think that's the reason, and that's why we have tried to emphasize why this is an important local issue, why it matters for the movement against genocide, and why there are really important local free speech and democratic principles at stake here. Because this is one issue, but you can see what's happening around the country. There are many other instances of free speech and democracy being denied, especially around Palestine, immigrant rights, et cetera.
Yeah, Councilor Grant?
Hi, thank you, Councilor Grant, Central District City Councilor. I would really encourage everyone to go back to the previous 2 meetings where there was an attempt to get it on the ballot and listen to some of the comments that was made. At the first meeting, I had a fellow councilor who said she didn't know what apartheid meant. So this is what we are dealing with. Said that in an open meeting about this resolution. They knew well in advance that they weren't going to support it. So we'll make a difference. So much has happened, so much. And it is willful neglect to just turn one's eyes away. To literally say there's no occupation when the occupied territories are literally called the occupied territories. It's willful, it's a form of political violence, and it's important that people make their voices heard and that you do contact them. The freedom of speech resolution we passed, the stuff that was going on behind the scenes, they wanted to equate some of the language of talking about what was going on in Gaza as being anti-Semitic. And we were like, you want to have that argument in an open meeting? We're ready. We're ready. And so they didn't push it. But they have to understand where we are now. They have to. I think, gosh, I could go on about this, but I'll just leave it there. But I would just say your voices do matter. And more than at any time, it matters to do an email. It matters to do a post. It matters to do a DM. It really does. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Roxanne.
Hi, I'm Roxanne, Ward 2. I had a question of if it goes on the ballot and it passes, what do you hope to happen after? What do you think the impact will be of the measure?
Okay, so it's an advisory referendum, about a pledge to take action to break ties with apartheid Israel. So in some sense, it's up to us to make recommendations. It's up to the city council to figure it out. What other municipalities have done is have policies around procurement, like we're not going to buy these products related to the Israeli genocide, Caterpillar, home demolition equipment, for instance. There are many others on the boycott list. Could look at divestment of pension funds from Israeli companies or companies that are on the boycott, the boycott, divestment, sanctions list. There could be commitments to protecting Palestinian human rights, educating about anti-Palestinian racism. There could be commitments to free speech around this issue in the city. There could be educational support for educational activities. And I expect others that we haven't thought of, that people will raise and want to do.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Regarding next steps, it sounds like we have sufficient interest in having the resolution on next month's agenda. Any naysayers for whatever reason? Okay, so yeah, the steering committee will absolutely collaborate with Apartheid-Free Vermont and come up with a draft resolution that we can bring to the community in December. And then the vote could happen next month.
Yeah, if I could say one thing about the timeline for this, we are making presentations at all the neighborhood plan assemblies, so this is the second one. We have the rest scheduled by the middle of December. The vote at the city council we expect to take place in January. So December would be a great time to pass the resolution, and from now until then would be a great time to sign the open letter, contact city councilors, and if you're interested in working more on this, you can come to the Vermont Coalition for Palestinian Liberation meeting in early December.
And yes, so Lauren was able to confirm that presentation can be accessed by scanning QR code on our agenda. And also, if anyone has any further comments, suggestions, what have you after tonight, just email the Ward 2 Steering Committee. Yeah, we've still got like 5-6 minutes, but yeah, well, thank you
That's
so
good.
much
Yeah.
to the both of you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So next on our agenda, I would love to call up Rachel Elliott from Migrant Justice for just some overview updates. Rachel is the Communications and Development Coordinator of Migrant Justice. And yeah, thank you, Rachel.
Hey everyone, thank you so much. I'm also bringing up my colleague Abel Luna to be part of this presentation. We did not talk about this before and didn't know that we were both going to be here, so we're going to go for it. Just wanted to give a brief overview of Migrant Justice, who we are. That's Abel's kid, Abelito. Just give a brief overview of who we are, the work that we do, and some ways to get involved. So I will pass it over to Abel.
Thank you, Rachel. How's everyone doing? Feeling tired and food's kicking in. I understand. My name is Abel Luna, and I'm an organizer with Migrant Justice. And I just recently moved to Ward 2. I'm up in next to on Rose Street. But I've been coming to the community dinners for like the past 2 years and enjoying the food and the company of everyone. And here with Martha and Abelito as well. And Yeah, so how many of you know about migrant justice? Maybe with a show of hands. Ooh, okay. Maybe I'll take a few comments and you can just shout it out. What do you know about migrant justice? Espérate, papi.
It's been around for a couple decades, am I accurate? And one of the issues that it tackled in the past is kind of milk with dignity and kind of standing up for dairy farm workers that
Thank you.
are often treated poorly.
Thank you. Anyone else? Labor rights. Anyone else from this side or this side? Sure. Yep. Agricultural safety, and maybe one more person. Yeah. So, yep. Yeah. So everything that you guys, have mentioned, it's right on point. And for those of you that don't know, well, it seems like everyone knows about migrant justice, but maybe like a quick reminder, migrant justice gets started in 2009 after the death of a young farm worker named Jose Obed Santis Cruz from Chiapas, Mexico, a teenager, who that could have been prevented. But that was the spark to a conversation amongst our community, the migrant community, but also the consumer community, the wider community in Vermont. There is migrant farm workers maintaining and sustaining some of the most famous brands of ice cream, cheese, and many dairy products. And since then, since 2009, we've been organizing, to advance human rights and economic justice. And we do it in a very similar way, which is happening here. We come together, we gather, we share a meal, we talk about the issues that are happening in the community, the issues that people are facing, the families are facing. And then together, we dream about what life can look like, how can it be different, and then together we take collective action to to advance human rights and economic justice. We've been since 2009 organizing, and there's a bunch of different rights and campaigns and policies that we have won to ensure that life is a better, that Vermont is a better state for everyone. From a driver license campaign, regardless of where you're from, what part of the world or what color, it doesn't matter. You have the right to freedom of movement in Vermont. A campaign called Fair and Impartial Policing Policy to discontinue the collaboration between local police and Border Patrol, and we'll be speaking in a little bit about that. And the Meal with Dignity program, which a lot of you mentioned, and recently a housing campaign, that prohibits discrimination from landlords that don't want to rent, house or a home to migrant communities, and an education campaign just recently passed as well for immigrant communities to have access to higher education. All of that, it's only done when we come together, when we organize, and when we take action together. And that's why we're here, because we want you guys to know that you guys have a place in migrant justice, as allies and as consumers as well, to push companies that are selling us products that we know they're not coming from fair conditions or fair labor conditions. And so I think it's important for all of us to know that. And we're organizing farm workers, but at the same time, we're organizing to bring economic justice also to farmers who are so struggling and being crushed by these huge corporations who at the end of the day get to control how much they paid farmers for their milk and their products. So I think with that, I'll pass it over to my colleague Rachel. I think we'll be touching on a very important issue that I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware, and it's very real here in Burlington. A lot of our neighbors, down the street and around us, they're being detained and kidnapped by Border Patrol and ICE. And so I think it's important for us as a community to be aware, of what is going on, what is happening, and the different steps and ways in which we can support. I'm gonna watch Abelito, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Abel. Yeah, so as my colleague Abel was mentioning briefly at the end, and I'm sure y'all have been seeing in the news, there's been a really drastic increase in immigration detentions nationwide, but also here in Vermont. Because of the makeup of Vermont, I think a lot of people don't associate this state with immigration issues, but it's a pretty hot topic here. Over the past 10 months now, we've seen almost a 10-fold increase in immigration detentions. Migrant Justices alone has supported over 100 community members who have been detained. And thanks to massive mobilization by immigrant communities, by allies, we've been able to free quite a few of them from immigration detention, which is a huge victory, right? And that's something that can only happen when we have an organized community that's able to step up and take action. So one of the ways we've been organizing to do that is by putting together a rapid response network. Right now we have about 1,300 people who have been trained in rapid response, who have gone and had conversations to learn what their rights are and to talk very specifically about ways to take action if they see an immigration enforcement action happening. So for example, if ICE shows up at someone's house or shows up at a workplace, or if Border Patrol is just driving around and ends up detaining somebody. Usually it's about an hour-long presentation, so I'm just going to give the greatest hits right now so that we can very briefly do Know Your Rights training and then also talk specifically about who's doing the immigration enforcement here in Vermont. And that specifically is two different government agencies. One is Border Patrol, or Customs and Border Protection. They're pretty active. Their job, as the name might suggest, is to patrol the border within 100 miles in particular, right? And so because Vermont is so small, it's so northern, that means most of the state is within that 100-mile border zone, right? That means that Border Patrol could be active in most of the state. So from Canada down to about White River Junction, and then coming over east from the coast, getting towards Bennington County. So if you look at a map of Vermont, basically only Bennington County is not within 100 miles of the border. Border Patrol is really active here. A couple of the major detentions we've seen this year have been done by Border Patrol, including a major detention that happened less than a week ago in Jeffersonville, where 9 construction workers were detained on their way to work. They are easier to recognize than ICE, which is great, right? They have marked cars that are white with a green stripe, and they wear uniforms that are green. They're pretty straightforward to recognize. And they're less active in Vermont proper, or not Vermont proper, sorry, Burlington proper, right? I haven't seen many Border Patrol officers running around here. ICE, on the other hand, is very active within Burlington. We've responded to ICE arrests, detentions in progress, even within Ward 2. So this is happening literally to your neighbors, right? To people who could and should be in this meeting right now. And so as part of those rapid response trainings, we talk about, how do you get involved? How do you, what are your rights, that sort of thing. There are a couple of those trainings coming up over the next month. In particular, one this coming Wednesday. That'll be online, remote, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Come talk to me after. I'm happy to talk to you about how to get signed up for that. Would love to have you. Because ICE is harder to recognize, right? They don't drive marked cars most of the time, and they don't wear uniforms. Sometimes they'll have a vest or a jacket that says ICE or says police, but they're not rocking around identifying themselves, right? They're trying to be subtle. They drive, the kind of car you see every day on the street, right? Even there are a couple of undercover ICE Subarus that we've been able to identify, which feels particularly hateful. But these are the things that we can talk about, right, and prepare for. Very basically, though, I want to do a quick little call and response Know Your Rights training, just so we're at least get a little bit of the basics together. So I'm going to say something, and then I'm going to motion broadly at you all to say it back to me. So, I exercise my right to remain silent. Everybody, regardless of their immigration status, has the right to remain silent. If an immigration officer asks you questions, either about you, your neighbors, the time of day, you don't have to answer them, right? And it's a really good idea not to, regardless of your immigration status. Because, if you are someone who is at risk for immigration enforcement, the things that you share might put you at more risk, right? In fact, I'll say about the majority of immigration detentions happen because of so-called consensual encounters, which is a really gross kind of big brother way of saying that when the interaction between the officer and the person they ended up detaining started, the officer didn't have probable cause, right? They didn't have enough information to legally detain that person, but over the course of the conversation, they were able to push the person into sharing their information and end up detaining the person at the end. Right? So not sharing your information is a great way to avoid that. And even if you yourself are not at risk for immigration enforcement, keeping silent, keeping what you know to yourself is a great way to keep yourself and your community safe, either by not sharing information about your neighbors, and also, frankly, just by normalizing not talking to immigration enforcement. Because if it's only people who are at risk who don't talk to immigration enforcement, that becomes something that officers can look for, right? But if nobody talks to immigration enforcement, they can't use that as an excuse to detain someone. So I exercise my right to remain silent. The next and the last thing I want to talk about is what to do if you're in an interaction with an officer and how to try to get out of that situation. So the first thing that you want to ask is, am I being detained? If they say no, you're not being detained, you can just ask, am I free to leave? Yeah. If they say yes, you can leave. You can just walk away. This is not a good time to turn around and sprint or hop in your car and peel out, but just calmly leave, get out of that situation. But if they say you're not free to leave, or if they say yes, you're being detained, that means you're being detained. That means you can't leave until they say you can. And so with that, you want to ask, what is the probable cause of this detention? Yeah. So under the law, immigration officers need to have probable cause to detain somebody. And if you'd asked me a month ago, I would have said that that doesn't include, technically, stuff like race or the language that someone speaks. Obviously, racial profiling is a huge part of immigration enforcement, regardless of what the law says. But there were at least a little bit of protection in that way. But I would guess that many of you are following what's going on in LA with the big immigration raids there. Is that correct? People have been following that? Okay, good. So basically, what happened is immigration enforcement rolled up to LA, escalated the situation, detained a bunch of people, and it was very clearly based on race and language, right, and where people were working. And people sued and got that practice stopped briefly while the court case is pending. But unfortunately, that brief pause was overturned by a higher court, which opened the way for immigration enforcement to legally use someone's race or the language that they speak as a reason to detain them. That is something to keep in mind. That's something to be aware of. That's an ongoing legal process that hopefully will end up shutting it down. But in the meantime, that's something to keep in mind. Technically, it should be something as straightforward as saying, I'm undocumented, I am an immigrant, I'm not from here, that sort of thing. But because immigration enforcement ultimately is a tool of power, it's a tool of white supremacy, of capitalism, that gets circumvented, right? So I think those are the most important things of the Know Your Rights training that we do in the rapid response. And from there, we just talk a lot about what to do if you see something happening, right? If ICE shows up at your door, if somebody gets detained, added ICE check-in, for instance. I would really love to have as many people here who are willing come to one of those trainings. So please come up to me after and talk about it. I can get you on the list so that you can get even more of this information to get deeper into it. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about briefly is the Milk with Dignity campaign. Abel talked about it briefly, talking about where it came from, why it came up, a little bit about the conditions on the farms here in Vermont. And I just wanted to give a brief update on how that campaign is going. It has been 6, almost 7 years now that we've been in that campaign. And it was a little slow at first, frankly, because we're going up against a huge multinational corporation that makes like $100 billion a year, which is crazy. But over time, as public pressure has grown, we've been able to make big moves towards getting them to sign on to this program. Most recently, in April, a couple of our staff members went to the Netherlands, which is where Hannaford's parent company is based, and went to the shareholder meeting and was basically like, look what your kid is doing. Look at this, look at these human rights abuses, look at these injustices that are benefiting one of the companies that you own and you invest in. What are you gonna do about it? And they responded pretty positively. They said they would meet with us, which they have, but we're continuing to push on that. But more importantly, they agreed to send third-party auditors, human rights investigators to Vermont to go to dairy farms, to talk with dairy workers, to get a better understanding of what's going on. Which, in one way, is a little frustrating, right? Because Migrant Justice has been shouting from the rooftops for the last 6 or 7 years about what's going on here. And they decided they needed to send in people who had never worked on a dairy farm, never experienced any of it personally. But, at the very least, they came out, spoke with a bunch of workers, and now we're waiting on their report, which is really exciting. It means their parent company is listening. We have a statement from Hannaford saying that in retrospect, they're glad that Migrant Justice has been in this campaign, pulling attention to what's going on so that they can take steps to improve their supply chain, which is cool. And at the same time, that doesn't mean that right now is the time to give up or be quiet. It means it's the time to take advantage of that little tiny handhold that we have and take even more action and be even louder. So this Saturday, we're doing a big day of action where we will have 3 pickets around Vermont. The first one in Morrisville in the morning from 10 a.m. to noon. One in South Burlington on Shelburne Road, which is close enough by that y'all could get to pretty easy, I hope. From 1 to 3 p.m. We will be out there with signs, we'll be out there marching, sharing information with consumers so that we can continue to push for human rights. And then finally, from 4 to 6 in Middlebury. We'll have hot food, we'll have hot drinks, it's gonna be a little chilly out, so put on a couple sweaters and come out. We can talk a lot more about what this program does, the way it changes people's lives. And even if you can't come out on Saturday, there's a really good, very concrete way to take action that you can do right now tonight, which is to come over to wherever I am sitting after this and come grab a Hannaford consumer pledge. We'll say we're trying to measure the amount of support that we have, right? So far, over 2,000 Hannaford customers have signed the pledge saying they support Milk with Dignity, they support farm workers' rights, and they're ready to boycott if farm workers call for that. Even if you're not ready to boycott, that's okay. That's really important for us to know. So if everyone wants to come over, grab one of these and either fill it out now, or you can scan the QR code and fill it out online if you don't feel like using a pen. That is totally okay. But we're really trying to get as many of these pledges signed and as much information as we possibly can. So if you want to come over and sign one of those, that would be a really good way to take action right here, right now, tonight. I think that's all that I wanted to share. Abel, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, as Rachel is mentioning, the day of action is really important. So this Saturday, if you can be there the entire day, if you have nothing to do on Saturday, if you have a circle of friends that are free on Saturday and looking to do something fun, definitely join us from the very beginning. If you, the information is on the little flyer that we just passed out. Starting in Morrisville, it's important. It takes years, might seem like a long time, but companies such as Hannaford's, it takes, they have a bunch of power. They think they have a bunch of power, but it's really important for them to know that consumers are standing behind farm workers, that consumers are standing behind farmers, and consumers are demanding a product that, has dignity and respect inside that product. And so the more people that show up, the more the consumers show up, the more the consumers leave their voices and vote with their dollars and saying, I'm not gonna support and I'm not gonna be buying from Hannaford's on that day. That's one of the things that we're asking consumers not to do. Don't shop at Hannaford's for that day. And, if you can do that, that's awesome. The more people that we can get there, the more noise that we can make, and the bigger our voice. And that's the only way to move a company. It took us, some time with Ben and Jerry's. Now, life is very different for those that are under the program. Decent housing, decent, fair wages, fair housing. People are being respected, and a lot of other different things. And so, it works. The Mill with Dignity program works, and that's why we continue to take on the streets, to march, to lift our voices. And so we need your support. We can only do it together. That's the only way.
Perfect. Thank you, Abel. And one last thing I want to add, because this is a question that I get a lot, right? People are paying a lot of attention right now to immigration enforcement, which is good. We need that attention. We need that energy. But detention defense, deportation defense answers the question of whether or not someone can go home, which is fundamentally important, right? But something like the Milk with Dignity program or the housing law that we got passed last year, that kind of work answers the question of what kind of home are people going back to, which is just as important, right? You can't fight for, there's value in fighting for someone to come home regardless of the kind of home they're going to. But if you care about freedom, if you care about the rights of immigrants, of human beings broadly, worrying about whether they can come home is good, but also focusing on what kind of home people are coming back to, right? We want to make sure that people are coming back into a home that isn't full of pests, that isn't, covered in mold, that is warm enough in the winter, that has enough space for everyone. Those are the kind of questions that the Milk with Dignity program can answer. So yeah. We'll leave it at that. Again, we'll be here for a little while. I'm happy to answer any questions. If anyone's interested, I brought a bunch of t-shirts and sweatshirts. If you want to, have something to wear on Saturday, come chat to me after.
Okay, actually, I just want to add one thing. So I'm Charlie G. from Ward 2. So I've actually been to a lot of the rallies and demonstrations that have happened on the Shelburne Road especially. And the one thing that really hasn't been emphasized tonight is when you go to these events, they're actually fun, okay? Everybody is usually in good spirits, everybody's talking together, they usually have food there, and everybody basically has a good time. So if you're looking for a good time for an hour or two, go to one of these demonstrations from Migrant Justice like on the Shelburne Road, and I think you'll enjoy yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Migrant Justice. Any questions, comments? We still have about 6 minutes, technically, scheduled for this block of our agenda.
Does anyone have questions that they want to ask the whole group? You're feeling bold.
Yeah, I have a question.
If you could just state your name and ward, thank you.
Hi, I'm Justine Henninger from Ward 3. I feel like I've seen a lot of videos online of ICE agents being sent away by the citizens, and I just want to know exactly what is sending them away. Is it because there's no warrant? What is being said that has the power to do that? I feel like I'm not fully understanding that, and I would love to have that information. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And that is a really good question, and I think it does depend on the particular situation, the kind of videos you're seeing. Some of it is just pure force of community, the pure numbers game of there are a lot of people who are really against what's going on right now and who are standing up and standing in solidarity with immigrant communities, with their friends, with their family, with their neighbors. And ultimately, immigration enforcement knows there are a lot more people against them than in favor of them. And so if they roll up somewhere and there are a ton of people who are saying, hey, you're not welcome here, there's a certain fear factor in that, right? But there are also very clear legal protections. The kind of stuff that we talked about just now with people not answering questions, people not identifying themselves, people not sharing information. And something which I didn't talk about in depth just now, but you mentioned, was warrants, right? That is something that's really important. In order for immigration enforcement to enter private property like a home, like a car, they need to have what's called a judicial warrant. That means a warrant that is signed by a judge. That's different from something like a deportation order that is focused on whether or not someone can be detained. A judicial warrant in this context specifically gives agents the ability to enter private property and look for someone. If they don't have that warrant, and the property owner or someone in charge of the property, like a property manager, or like if it's a restaurant, an employee, if somebody who's in charge of that property tells them to leave or doesn't give them permission to enter, they can't enter unless they have a warrant. That is a really important protection, and I'm really glad that you asked about warrants for pushing me towards talking a little more about that. But I would say that's part of it, right? The specific legal protections, and also when immigration enforcement comes face to face with an organized community who's ready to take action to protect themselves and protect their loved ones, that's something that turns them away as well.
Anything else?
So Paul Fleckenstein from Ward 2. I went to a Know Your Rights training. It was great. I really encourage everyone to go. And just want to say about migrant justice on this last point, that migrant justice has really led the way in showing how we don't have any rights. We don't have any democratic rights unless we are able to enforce them, unless we are able to make it real. And I think migrant justice has set an example for everyone in the state on how to do that by being public, by inviting people into organizing, and being based on a democratic organization of immigrant workers. So I think it's what we are going to be facing is worse than what we're seeing right now. So I think that migrant justice and this kind of, we have to be more prepared, and migrant justice is really leading the way on that.
Alrighty, another. Mark, thanks.
Hi, thanks for coming. I'm from Chicago, and I get a lot of videos from Chicago, and I've seen I've seen some videos of like ICE people being like, do you have a warrant? And they'll be like, I don't need a warrant, and they just do whatever they want anyways. And like the owner of a comedy club getting arrested for like doing what they're supposed to do. So I'm curious, like, are they just not following the law? And like, is there repercussions and like lawsuits afterwards happening? And like, what's the right thing to do? I definitely want to go to a training and like learn more, but like, what's the right thing to do if they're not respecting rights and they're just blatantly ignoring everything?
Yeah. Fair question. And as you were just saying, our rights only exist insofar as we protect them and push back. Something that we talk a lot about in this training is how to document what's going on. The fact that you're seeing videos of that means there was someone there with a camera, right? Which means, one, there's kind of the little angel on the officer's shoulder being like, hey, maybe don't break the law and violate people's rights. And if you can't rely on someone's own moral compass to tell them to do that, sometimes you gotta get a little peer pressure in there. But yeah, the short version is yes. A lot of what you're seeing is illegal. Those are officers who are breaking the laws that they're claiming to uphold. That's a lot of where organizing comes in, right? That's where the lawsuits come in that you mentioned. That's where pushing back comes in. I can give a very concrete example from Vermont. So in 2016, 2017, migrant justice was targeted by ICE. They waited outside our offices. They surveilled us digitally, physically. They put informants in our meetings and ended up detaining about 20 of our members and trying to deport them. And so we sued them, right? We were able to collect a bunch of evidence, bring it to court, and it was a pretty clear First Amendment violation, right? That was very clearly targeting people for political speech. And they settled and agreed to stop targeting migrant justice. This led to a nationwide policy that was in place under the Biden administration that meant that officers couldn't use somebody's involvement in that kind of community organizing as a reason to detain and deport them. That protection, unfortunately, is no longer in place under the current administration, and that's how, part of how we're able to see this big escalation in attacks against organizers. In particular, people organizing in solidarity with Palestine, obviously are being targeted because of free speech. But that is a very concrete example of the officers were breaking their own laws. We noticed, we documented what was going on, gathered all the evidence, went through the legal process, and ended getting that shut down. We can have a broader conversation about whether you think the legal system is the right way to deal with stuff. There's a certain amount of feeling of why are we going to reform within a system that is built to exploit and oppress people? That's perhaps a broader conversation to have, not right now. But there are ways to push back against it, right? And that is exactly what we talk about in the training. So definitely come through. Yeah. Did that satisfactorily answer your question? Yeah.
All right, at this point, we do need to move along in our agenda. Thank you so much again to Migrant Justice. If anyone else has questions, sure Rachel will be happy to answer, or anyone. Okay, so now we have Brenna Bedard online, I believe, from CVOEO's Community Resource Center, just to give us some information on resources you can access there and also how to best support them. Thanks, Brenna.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
Yes, thank you for having me. So I'm here to represent our Homeless Outreach Services team at CVOEO. I'm the Homeless Outreach Services Coordinator, and we are based out of the Community Resource Center, which is adjacent to the food shelf at 228 North Winooski Ave. At the Community Resource Center, we partner with Feeding Champlain Valley, and we provide a hot meal between the hours of 9:30 and 11:30 a.m. We stay open until about noon for folks to continue eating and connect with one another, and then we close 12 to 1 for lunch, and then we open back up 1 to 4 for folks to come access resources, case manage. We do a lot of housing case management, get folks connected to shelters, other housing providers, and then we also set them up with survival gear and hygiene supplies and various resources that people might need. We also are working on putting outreach back into our rotation. So we, as a lot of programs, lost funding, and so we had to cut back in some areas, and unfortunately our street outreach team took a hit from that, and so we are working on bringing that back into the fold, which would mean that we might have to close on Fridays to do outreach to encampments. So bring services directly to folks. We also, part of our team, we have a PSHA case manager, permanent supportive housing assistant. It's a new program through the state, and Ryan is fantastic. He provides a little bit more intensive case management support for our harder to house clients. And then we also have our 2 case managers who work at the Elmwood Pods. That's a partnership with CHT. So yeah, I didn't provide any slides. I thought it could just be a conversation, but we are always looking for donations. Right now we are struggling with funding streams and keeping up with the demand of what folks need. We last month saw 400 individuals. About 50 to 60% of those individuals are unhoused, unsheltered, so sleeping outside or in their car. So we are always looking for donations of tents, unused sleeping bags or gently used sleeping bags, winter boots, winter coats, mittens, gloves, anything you could think of. So yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
We set aside a whole 25 minutes for Brenna, so please don't be shy with questions, comments.
see your hand, but I don't know if I have yeah.
I was just yelling from the audience, thank you for the work you do.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kason, Ward 2. My question is about the Feeding Chittenden building. I know that looks like it might be close to getting finished with like the new sort of the renovation that they're doing on the side there. Is that,
Yeah.
my understanding is that that's going to be like more office space, maybe like a community space for people to have like a warm space to go during the day, like after they eat the meal. Is that accurate? I'm just curious what it is.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad that you brought that up. I totally forgot to mention that. Yeah, we are under construction right now, which is obvious to anybody that drives by. So the construction was planned a couple years ago, and it was primarily for Feeding Champlain Valley because the Community Resource Center moved into the food shelf space. And so Feeding Champlain Valley has a lot of displaced employees right now just because of the size of the building and the amount of people that we have on staff. So the space so we're going to push the dining room out. So we're going to extend the dining room space so that we can accommodate more guests. And also, as we move into the colder months, we're going to just keep the space open as like a daytime warming spot for people to get coffee, get snacks, just to like take a break from the cold. And then there's going to be a second level upstairs, and that will be office space for Feeding Champlain Valley staff who have been displaced throughout the years from just the expansion of both programs.
Great, thank you so much for answering that question.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it to be finished. It looks, yeah, I don't know.
Me too.
Yeah, I live really close to
Me
it,
too.
so I'm always like, oh, look.
Yeah, we've been cohabitating with construction, and today I must say it was a challenge.
Anyone else?
Hi, I guess my question is just where is the best place to donate things, like physical
Yeah.
donations?
Great question. Thank you. So we take donations between the hours of 1 and 4, just because the breakfast rush is so chaotic and it would be just a mess to try and take donations at that time. So we'll take them between 1 and 4, and you can bring them right to 228 North Winooski Ave. So there's 2 doors. The one on the left side is the Community Resource Center door. You'll see the sign on the door, and you can just walk right in there. And then our office is in the front. So someone will greet you and we'll happily take the donations. I also wanted to mention that we have a community Thanksgiving meal on Wednesday, November 26th from 9:30 to 12:30. So feel free to come.
Any other questions? Sorry, I keep on standing underneath the speaker. Any other questions, clarifications, comments for Brenna? Going once. Okay. Anything else from you, Brenna?
I don't think so. No, thank you for having me.
Okay. Well, great. Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. Moving right along. The next agenda item we have is there are a couple different development projects going on in our area of the great city of Burlington. So first we have Michael Chaucer, who is online, I believe, to speak about 126 North Avenue from Haven Architecture, LLC. Okay, take it away.
Right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. First of all, to make sure you're seeing a large blue slide. Yes.
Yes, blue slide.
Excellent. Thank you. That is the correct screen. All right. So yeah, my name is Michael Chaucer. I'm an architect. I work at Haven Architecture. Our main office is on Battery Street in Burlington. I've been doing this for about 6 years now. Before that, I was a contractor. And Haven Architecture, we're a small residential design firm. We have some folks who work with us in the Boston area. I'm up here in Burlington, and then we have one person out in Colorado. So this project is located at 126 North Avenue, just a few houses north of Brian's Auto, not too far from the community center. And yeah, this is about 100-year-old duplex that's there right now. It's in pretty poor condition. Foundation is failing. It was for a long time owned by a series of negligent landlords, and at this point needs more repair than the building is worth. So the purpose of this development is to help resolve in some small way our housing shortage. The idea here is to take an underutilized lot, a building that's in disrepair, and try to take advantage of the new neighborhood code to create some missing middle housing. So that means middle density and middle income affordable. That's what missing middle tends to refer to. So in this case, the goal is to create 16 units. They'll be highly efficient, all electric units, and all targeting middle income affordability. Middle income affordability is a specific range of rental rates that's defined by the Housing and Urban Development Department. It's also metrics that VHFA sets forth for some of their loan programs, which this project is taking advantage of, or hoping to. All the units will be 1 or 2 bedrooms, and like I said, highly efficient. They're pretty small units in order to get 16 in there, but hoping to create some affordable housing here. So goals for the outside aesthetic is, we're taking inspiration from the Old North End, from the existing buildings that we all know and love. These are the actual source images that, I went around and been taking notes from all these local buildings. These are all screenshots, of course, from Street View, but I have my own book of photographs that I've taken from what used to be my neighborhood. I used to live right here. And all of our designs are based off these images and sketches from around town, and sort of some of the detailing that we see around town, some of the beautiful vibrant colors. And so that's kind of the goal that we're going for, is to create something that will sort of fit seamlessly into this existing cultural fabric that we have here. The building will be 4 stories. I want to actually mention this. So these buildings all pictured are all 3 or less. So this building will actually be a little bit taller than these, but hopefully shouldn't stand out too much. Amenities in the building, so it'll be all electric. They'll have each unit will be FHA accessibility compliant. So that means it will be the FHA definition is adaptable. So ready to install grab bars, panels, easy to remove panels under sinks, certain clearances and widths of hallways and that kind of thing, so that if we have residents with wheelchair use, that can be easily adapted for their use. The building will have an elevator. There will be indoor secure bike parking for all residents. I believe right now we have roughly 24 bicycle parking spaces planned for 16 units, which is pretty good. We're going to include some electric bike charging stations, and the whole building will be dog friendly. There'll be a fenced in yard for the dogs, a small dog park, and a rooftop deck, which we hope to plan neighborhood access to. I don't know if we're going to get away with having that be actually public access or not, but it'll be a pretty stellar deck with some great views of the lake, hopefully. So timeline for the project, we are hoping to begin construction this summer, maybe fall, and we expect construction to take somewhere between 12 and 18 months. The goal is to have units available for rent in June 2028 at the latest, so possibly sooner than that. And that's all I've got. Any questions so far? And I'm only seeing a small
Hi.
section of the room, so I'll need someone to tell me that there's a question. There we go.
Yeah, my name's Julia, and I live in Ward 2, and I live pretty much directly behind where this project will take place. I'm on Drew Street, so we're diagonally behind our new. I'm just curious about the scale of the project for that particular spot. It's just, you're just south of the fire station, right? It's right next to the fire station?
Yep, it's neighboring the fire station.
Yeah. So I guess my questions are about, like, I guess you're going to demo this house, right? So what kind of things do you do to keep dust, debris, asbestos, whatever's in it, from drifting into neighborhood yards? I guess that's one thing. So what kind of remediation will you be doing? And then the other, I guess, is just some concerns about the scale. You said it's 4 stories?
Yep. Yeah, so the new neighborhood code allows us to go up to 4 stories or 50 feet. Or sorry, I should say 4 stories and 50 feet. So it's both of those maximums apply. So we'll be taking advantage of that. So the new building will be planned to be zoning compliant. So not going above and beyond what's allowed. It is taller than the existing neighboring buildings, but that is, that's part of the intention behind that new neighborhood code, is to allow more housing to be built to try to ease the housing crisis and hopefully get more people into homes who currently don't have them. So that's our goal here. The construction impact question is a great question. That's really a really critical thing for us. Just personally, as in our firm as architects, we're really passionate about lead dust control, asbestos dust control. So hiring a contractor who has all the appropriate certifications, who's dedicated to those means and methods, is how we'll be doing that. So there are best practices, and our contractors will absolutely be following those best practices to mitigate those impacts.
Well, that, is it possible? I mean, I'm concerned, we have a garden in the backyard. I'm just concerned about contamination from, and lead in particular too. So will you be reaching out to the neighbors that are on 3 sides of this project?
Reaching out in regards, so this meeting is our public outreach prior to the zoning permit application, so there'll be notices posted as well after the zoning permit is applied for. In terms of specific notification regarding like dust control, that's the sort of out of our wheelhouse and more into the purview of the contractor. I'm not sure what the standard practices are there, but I'm sure that there'll be some kind of notifications and there'll be appropriate signage. I know that for lead dust control, for example, they're required to post signs at certain distances, along property parameter and that kind of thing. And so I'm sure that we will follow, or the contractor will follow all of those regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Charlie?
So can you tell us, so did you go, I didn't catch your entire presentation. So did you talk about parking adequacy, snow storage, snow removal, trash removal, trash? So what are your plans for all those kinds of things?
So that would be, that's sort of under the purview of the maintenance team, but the developers, the owners of the building. I don't believe snow removal will be much of an issue. There's not a lot of the site that will need to be cleared in snowstorms. It's a single walkway, essentially. Trash and recycling. Right now, we're planning an area for trash and recycling totes, wheelable totes that's behind the building at the back of the lot, and those will be wheeled out to the street for pickup and then wheeled back by the trash recycling pickup teams. So you pay an extra fee for them to provide that service, but that way it keeps trash recycling off the street and out of view and out of the neighbor's hair and all that.
So what are your requirements for parking?
We do not, so that's one of the beautiful new things that the Burlington zoning ordinance has done to help encourage more housing density, is we have no minimum parking requirement. This building, one of the main priorities of this building and of the new owners is to encourage pedestrian and bicycle commuting. So there will be no no off-street parking for this building. So they'll be providing bike storage, pedestrian, amenities, related to bicycle commuting and that kind of thing. And then, of course, it's on a bus line, bus stop directly outside the front door and another one across the street.
Thanks.
Thank you. My name's Emma, and I live in Ward 2. Could you just help me understand, I guess, what you mean by middle income affordability? Like, who would that, like, what does that mean, I guess? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a term defined both by HUD and by VHFA, and what that refers to is anywhere between 80% and 120% of the annual median income. So they take that, and in this particular circumstance, they take that from not Vermont, not the US, but actually Chittenden County. So it'll be, you take 80 to 120% of the AMI for Chittenden County, and then divide that by 3. And so 1/3 of that would be what's considered affordable for cost of living. So that's the target area for rents for this building. So hopefully most Burlington residents can afford it. That's the whole purpose.
And just to clarify some acronyms: HUD, Housing and Urban Development at the federal level, VHFA, Vermont Housing Finance Agency, if anyone was unaware. Was there a part 2? I did see your hand, but okay.
Thank you for helping to find that. Like, do you happen to have that math done offhand for Chittenden County? Or like that?
I don't have it in front of me. It is all available at, I believe it's housingdata.org. It's VHFA has a website where they present all this information for the public. They've made it very easy to find if you're looking for it.
Cool, thank you. We'll Google it a little more.
Thanks.
Good question. Oh, okay. That was the other question over here. Good question, good question. Anyone else? We are way ahead of time. Okay. And looks like Michael has contact information up there. If anyone has any further questions.
Feel free to reach out.
Okay. Well, thank you, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
So, coincidentally, our other presentation tonight, development project at 134-141 Archibald Street, is Michael Alvanos from JRMA Design Studio. And are you all set? I am. Okay, you can. Share my screen here. Yes, help yourself up front. And do we have, Barbara, did we have the presentation already? Or Michael, did you share it? Or?
I did, but I'm happy to share my screen too. You're on the Zoom, right? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Check, check. All right. My name is Michael Alvanos. I'm with JRMA Design Studio. So we are in the process of designing or redesigning a pre-existing building on Archibald Street and Bright Street here in Burlington. The owners of this building have owned it, I want to say, for less than 10 years. Being from Burlington, I know this building pretty well because I drive by it virtually every day. It's the old banister roofing and siding building. I want to say around 10 years ago, the building sold, and the owners have been using it as primarily an office and storage space. The owners, who are the owners of the Skinny Pancake, the front of the building currently is being used for offices. The kind of the front portion that faces Archibald and the back portion, they've converted. They've added some garages, or they had converted some of the space to storage. They have some, existing garage doors on the Bright Street side, but they are going to be moving to another location. They're moving their offices to another location, and rather than sell the building, I think the concept they're trying to do is convert the existing building to apartments and studios. So you can get a little glimpse of what we're trying to envision. This is that sort of the Bright Street side, but one of the things that I like to highlight with any of these buildings that we do is that Vermont is way ahead of the game in terms of energy efficiency, and whenever a building does come up for one of these rehabilitations, we have to meet the new energy requirements for the state of Vermont. It may not sound like a big deal to most people, but in terms of retrofitting some of these older buildings, some of these old buildings were absolutely the worst when it came to energy efficiency. And through the process of doing this whole thing, one of the key factors you got to understand is we have to build to the current energy code. There was a little bit of a setback because the governor just pushed us back a little bit from an energy standpoint to pre-COVID standards, because I think recently a lot of contractors and owners and architects were having a lot of trouble implementing the new code because of cost issues, but still the 2020 code that we're implementing is still pretty robust. Just a little side note for anybody, if any project comes in. These are pictures of the current building as it sits on site today. So like I said, the owners of the building utilize the front here for offices. They've got, I think this was a pre-existing garage door, but then there's another garage door in the back where they primarily just they have a ton of restaurant equipment in there, old signs. They utilize it for their backup napkins and whatever you can think of for their restaurants. But the building, like I said, the building was retrofitted a few years ago, sort of to what they need, but now they're willing to take a chance and start to provide some much needed housing that the previous architect was discussing. We are in a severe housing issue. We're in a severe housing crunch right now. That's probably, I'm sure everybody knows that, but pre-existing building's it's about 3,200 square feet of a footprint. The site makes this L shape. The owners by design have tried not to do too much to impact the overall site. There's about 4 or 5 parking spaces here currently, but what they're trying to do is similar to the previous project. The city has really pushed for alternate modes of transportation. So conceptually speaking, most of the projects that I've been doing in Burlington, as well as projects that are coming across, I think anybody I'm sure you guys see a lot of projects, the city's trying to push for multimodal, meaning walking, biking, buses. They want to try to utilize existing infrastructure rather than try to lean into trying to park everybody on the site. For better or for worse, architects, developers, owners of pre-existing buildings are trying to utilize that to provide as much housing as we can with the existing infrastructure that we have. So with that being said, the existing site has a big concrete pad on the front, a big, like an old driveway that used to go into a garage. It's got this pre-existing parking lot in the back. They do have some green space that they're trying to maintain. They don't want to just blanket the whole thing with parking. They have an existing concrete pad too that at this point they're not going to be taking it away. I think they're going to try to utilize it in the future for some, you'll see on the site plan when I bring it up, but for biking, rubbish removal, any amenities that the building needs in order to support its infrastructure. So again, this is a proposed site plan, and like I said, we are not really doing much to adapt the existing site plan. We're sort of ensuring that the parking is well understood, showing trash here, properly showing where snow removal is. We are removing the concrete from the Archibald side, hopefully making space around the building. Simple sort of improvements to the site. We are not, by design again, we are not going to be pushing or going higher or trying to go beyond the current footprint of the building. This is some bike parking concepts that we have, again, trying to utilize, bike parking, trying to be inventive, try to be fun with the bike parking that we have. We have to provide some updating landscaping improvements around the building, but we're thinking some ornamental grasses, some new trees to help with the streetscape. These are some concepts behind how the building will look from an aerial perspective. Some streetscapes. This view is from if you're across the street on Bright Street looking at the building. We are proposing at this point a series of 1-bedrooms and studios. We've sort of adapted the design a little bit. This will be a 1-bedroom. The middle units are going to end up being more or less studios, and this will probably be a single unit as well. So one of the troubles we always have as architects is, especially in an urban environment, is, our lot is pretty tight on either side. We are, with safety codes, with fire codes, life safety issues, we're not allowed to put any windows on the back of the building because of the proximity to the property line. So here's some elevations. Again, these are straight-on views to give you kind of a taste of what we are sort of conceptualizing. We're trying to utilize, materials that you'd see in the neighborhood. We are thinking primarily some type of like wood or some type of, natural material. Maybe we do some type of accent metal panels. We're talking about the possibility of really announcing the units by giving them like what's called a super graphic. This is the side that faces the property in the back, and again, you'll notice it's blank because of its proximity to the property line. Those are specs that the city wants. This gives you sort of an idea of, this is called a section view. Maybe you guys have seen plenty of architectural plans in the world, but the idea is that the studio in the front will be sort of an area for living, and the area in the back will house your bedroom and your bathroom. There is a possibility, we're still sort of looking at the concept of utilizing maybe some space up above. I probably wouldn't be able to stand up there. You can see it's only 7 feet tall, so and that's a best guess, to be honest with you. I'd probably be, probably at the back here, it's probably a little bit shorter, but some of these spaces, especially if they're 1-bedrooms and studios, they lack a lot of storage. So we're lucky in this design where we can utilize this upper level for the potential of putting some storage up there. I think that's about it. I mean, the rest is just specifications, but all in all, that's our project.
We actually have a question online.
I do believe you're unmuted and should be able to speak.
Okay, is this, yeah,
Gene, there
okay.
you go.
Hi, Gene Bergman here, Ward 2 City Councilor. I think that the bike racks, an outside bike rack that looks as cutesy as that is not going to fly very well for any secure parking of bikes in my neighborhood, and this is my neighborhood. You can't park bikes out there on the street like that. So indoor secure parking is something that would be very important. It looks like you're not looking to spend a lot of money, so I don't know what you're going to do about that. But I can just tell you that that is not a good idea. And the other point that I want to make has to do with the landscaping. That's an area that's, because of its proximity to two streets, particularly one with a major thoroughfare, Archibald Street, that there's going to be a lot of salt on there. So the salt resistant plantings that you've got, you've just got to pay a lot of attention to that. I think that means that they're probably more expensive than what you might be looking at. But that's just a real consideration in that area. I'm very supportive of infill development and doing it effectively, and that includes alternatives to parking like TDM requirements. But I don't think that, as I just said, the bike parking that's really exposed is going to be effective for people who are living there. Maybe for somebody who's there, in a short period of time during the day, a visitor, but not as somebody who's going to leave and put their bike out on the street. That's a recipe for getting ripped off. Thank you.
Thank you. That's good information, actually.
Any other questions?
Questions. Maybe you said it. My name's Travis, by the way. I live in Ward 5. How old is the current building that's there? Do you know?
Old.
And
I don't have at how exact when the original building was built. Best guess, I want to say maybe 1960s, 1970s at best.
Before then,
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, let's say 60 years, right, that this building is last. Like, we're doing 2020 energy efficiency codes for this new building. And are we planning for it to last another at least 60 years in our community? Because, like, to me, that's, like, if we're moving in a direction where we're more energy efficient, to me, like, making buildings that will last, that will do the thing that we have them set to do now is, like, really, really important. And I don't really think that should be seen as a barrier, especially because these will be lasting 60 years. And the last building we just looked at is 100 years old, and it's going to be updated. So I'm hoping that they all can last 100 years. It's more of a comment than a question, but thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, actually. Yeah, it's hard to, modern day, it's a big conversation, but this building, I would say, has the ability to last at least that long and more. It all depends on a lot of factors. One of the factors is Vermont beats up buildings pretty hard, and like Gene had mentioned about salt and any kind of, weather conditions. It depends on how the maintenance is on one of these buildings. If water infiltrates into some of these buildings, that can be pretty, and the owners don't know about it, or if you have an existing building in Burlington, and I think all of us have probably been in some buildings that have had deferred maintenance, and they're people neglect them. But I do think this owner does plan on putting the investment into this building and trying to usher it into a new era for the community. So.
Anyone else? No one online?
This is Brett Richard from North Winooski. Just where do you apply? And you take Section 8 housing and
The question is, where do you apply for Section 8 housing?
for your building? Your building. Your building. Where do you apply?
In our building, where do we apply for it? Yeah, I think that, I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I think it's authority maybe, or I know the owners are going to be probably out there. I know the owners will probably have it, listed on something, with, in the future. The other component I didn't bring up, and I'm sorry, I'm just from remembering, is the owners are trying to work with Spectrum Youth Housing to offer these as units. Like the first units that are available will be with Spectrum Youth Housing, but I don't know. I don't know the answer off the top of my head on how to apply.
I live down the street, so I can just kind of question you out there when you're working or something.
Yeah, if you talk with the NPA, or maybe I can get your name, and I'm happy to pass it along to the owners if it's something in the future you're looking into. So.
Thanks.
I want to say thank you to the NPA too for squeezing me in. I really, really appreciate it. So.
All right, well, thank you. And just like that, we've come to the end of our November meeting. We just have door prize. Mark, did I catch you organizing that? Well, thank you again, everyone, for coming out tonight. Our next meeting is December 11th. And friendly reminder, if Mark picks your name, you have to be in this room right now.
Solve.
Okay, congratulations, and thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Get home safe.